Welcome all mobility and smart city experts. I see that you've come from Europe, the Middle East, and also from the United States and Asia. After this online talk, we hope that you are inspired with lessons learned and insights from smart projects across Europe and the Middle East. But first, let me introduce you to our hosts. Michael Leyendecker, the head of the capital office of Berlin of Vitronic, as well as its head of business development, and also Youssef Al Hanzali, born in Morocco, studied in Germany, and is currently managing the biggest Vitronic subsidiary based in the United Arab Emirates. So, thank you for bringing us together, Michael and Youssef.
Thank you, Kees. My name is Michael Leyendecker, and I welcome you on behalf of Vitronic Berlin and on behalf of Vitronic Machine Vision Middle East, and particularly by our CEO in the Middle East, Youssef Al Hanzali. Berlin Vision is a series of real-life and online events dedicated towards traffic experts and senior scientists and business people from the traffic sector. The topic today is smart mobility and smart cities in Europe and the Middle East. The reason for combining the views of these two regions was actually an experience. Vitronic is active for about more than a decade now in the projects in the Middle East and obviously in Europe. And we made an experience. When my colleagues and myself, when we returned from our visits to the Middle East and from our customers in the Middle East, the European colleagues and as well experts from the European business community, they did know little about the projects in the Middle East. And this is rather something surprising we found, because there were very ambitious projects going on. And vice versa, we saw that the knowledge about the European smart city experience is a bit limited in the Middle East as well. So our goal for today is to build a bridge of experience and of dialogue between these two global regions. And in particular, to discuss about the lessons learned from both sides, which are of interest for the other side. I'm looking forward to the discussion now, and I would like to hand over now to my colleague in Dubai, Youssef Al Hanzali.
أهلا ومرحبا بكم في رؤية برلين في الحلقة الرابعة. معكم يوسف الحنصالي المدير التنفيذي لشركة فيترونيك الشرق الأوسط. أرحب بكم جميعا باسم مجموعة فيترونيك مع زميلي مايكل لايندكر من مكتب العاصمة برلين. رؤية برلين هي عبارة عن سلسلة من الفعاليات التي تركز على مناقشة مواضيع من الواقع الحياة، يتم بثه عبر الإنترنت من قبل مكتب فيترونيك في العاصمة برلين. يهدف البرنامج إلى جمع كبار الخبراء من القطاع الحكومي والقطاع الخاص والمجال العلمي لمناقشة مستقبل تكنولوجيا حركة المرور والنقل والمواصلات. موضوع برنامج اليوم هو حركة النقل الذكي والمدن الذكية في أوروبا ومنطقة الشرق الأوسط. إن الغرض من جمع وجهات النظر من أوروبا والعالم العربي هو تعزيز المعرفة من خلال التجارب والخبرات المكتسبة. لقد شهدت فيترونيك عدة مشاريع مرورية ذكية وجد متميزة في مدن مثل دبي وأبو ظبي والرياض ومسقط، ومن خلال هذه التجارب علمنا أن معرفة أوروبا ضئيلة جدا حول هذه المشاريع المتميزة والرائعة في الشرق الأوسط، وبالمقابل هناك معرفة محدودة وضئيلة في منطقة العالم العربي حول تجربة المدن الذكية في أوروبا. لذلك هدفنا اليوم هو بناء جسر بين هاتين المنطقتين من العالم لتبادل المعارف والتجارب حول أفضل المشاريع في مجالات حركة المرور والمواصلات والنقل الذكي. والآن أنا جد متشوق للمساهمات من المتحدثين والعلماء ذوي الخبرات الطويلة من أوروبا والشرق الأوسط، وأعطي المجال إلى مدير الجلسة كيس فان بوخم. The floor is yours.
Michael, first some housekeeping. I encourage you all to use your chat for questions and include which expert you want to address your question to. And our chat moderator, Manuel Schmidt, will collect these and will introduce them in the open forum right after the keynotes. Then the agenda. First, we have 3 10-minute keynotes, from our expert speakers, Steve Schneider, Malek Yamani, and Jörg Welke. I may ask them 1 or 2 questions after their keynote, and then the open forum starts, including the chats from you, the expert audience, and we will end at 3:30 sharp. So let me introduce our first speaker from Hamburg, not only the host city of the 2021 ITS World Conference, but also the smartest city in Germany, the managing director of ITS Mobility in Braunschweig and head of its R&D section, with the largest inner city test track for automated driving in the world, Mr. Steve Schneider. Today, he will enlighten us on his work on automated vehicle development. Well, Steve, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Thank you, Kes, for the brief introduction and for the invitation to explain our experiences with the ITS strategy in the city of Hamburg. I think first there's the question, what is the motivation for a city like Hamburg to implement and to define an ITS strategy? I think it's quite easy. This is a normal day in Hamburg, as you can see it here in the picture. So there's a huge amount of goods need to transfer via Hamburg and the local harbor, as well as there are millions of people traveling through Hamburg and within the city from A to B. So based on this, there are several challenges the city needs to address in the next 10 to 20 years. So the most important challenges for the city like Hamburg is the city is growing. Every year it's growing and growing, and the population is getting older and older in parallel. So there's an increase in the economic and commuter and tourism traffic. And because of that, for sure, an environment impact of the transport sector. And at least the shortage of space. So the space for the city of Hamburg, it's limited to exploit or to build up their infrastructure, their transport infrastructure. And to handle these challenges, the city of Hamburg decided to implement an ITS strategy and strategy for intelligent transport systems and services, and to achieve several goals with this. So the first goal is, for sure, they want to improve the transport safety. So there are a lot of accidents in the city of Hamburg, especially with vulnerable road users, for example, like bicyclists. They want to reduce the transport-related impacts on the environment. It's a big topic in Germany, for sure, and in whole Europe and the whole world. And they want to increase the reliability and efficiency of the transport system because they're growing. They want to support accurate and secure data collection, and at the end, promoting innovation for their companies. So based on these goals, they defined at the beginning of 2015 a strategy. But the ITS strategy is not for its alone. It's part of the smart city strategy of the whole city. So the smart city strategy provides like a framework for the ITS strategy and needs to fit it on it. And another important part of the framework is the ITS World Congress in 2021 in Hamburg. So this is an accelerator for the overall ITS strategy to ensure and to accelerate the activities within the strategy until 2021 and after. For the ITS strategy, the city of Hamburg decided to focus on several areas of actions. So they were thinking about, okay, what are the areas of action in the future, and decided for these 6 areas you can see right now. So it's data and information, intelligent transfer, intelligent traffic control and routing, intelligent infrastructure, intelligent parking, mobility as a service, and automated and connected driving. And through all of these areas, for sure, there are topics which are needed at every point: data quality, interoperability, as well as data privacy and security. Today, in this short keynote, I just like to point out one topic, and as you have heard before from Kes, it will be automated and connected driving. But why is this a potential topic for the city of Hamburg? The city of Hamburg has a long-term goal with this topic. They would like to improve the traffic flow and air quality, as well as increasing the road safety by automated driving vehicles. To reach this goal, until 2030, they have several short and medium-term goals as well. First, they want to identify requirements on future road infrastructure, because the city of Hamburg knows they need to invest in their infrastructure. And they want to take the right decisions regarding new investments. So they need to know which requirements are needed and they need to handle. Second, collecting experiences in real operation and automated and connected vehicles on urban roads. Shall they drive for their own? Do they need to control them? Is every street good enough to, or a good way to allow such vehicles to drive on? Third, the collecting of experiences on data exchange and cooperation between vehicles and road infrastructures. In the past, there were some simple interfaces to the vehicles, like a traffic light, but it's just unidirectional communication. So in future, they're able with new technologies to have a bidirectional communication, get information from the car and bring information to the cars or other vehicles in the transport systems. And last but not least, the overall testing of applications, improving road safety. To handle these goals and to ensure that they are able to reach them, they decided to implement an urban test track for urban automated and connected driving in Hamburg. So this is the most long-term activity in the overall area in automated and connected driving. The test track shall be open to any users and independent of vendors to allow and enable the city of Hamburg to test every application, every mobility service they think is maybe a good way for the future. And for this, they decided to use an inner city test track of about 9 kilometers in real traffic environment. Like you can see it here on the figure on the right side, it's just right in the middle of the town. So there's a lot of traffic there, a lot of traffic and complicated traffic situations. Within this circle, the city decided to equip 37 traffic lights with short-range communication. Currently, this is based on ITSG5, a Wi-Fi standard, and they gradually build and upgrade them, and it will be fully equipped at the end of 2020. And based on these test track, they want to offer scientists, companies, and other stakeholders to test their applications in urban traffic situations, like left-right turns for the vehicle manufacturers, for their automated cars, for example, cooperative traffic control, but also safety for bicyclists. As I said before, there's a problem in the city of Hamburg regarding this. So vulnerable road user detection is one of the key use cases. Now, we are doing this since 2 years. We are quite on a good way with the equipment, and we already have implemented several use cases on this test track, from OEMs to scientists, from vehicles to bicyclists. And we have now found out some challenges and lessons learned in these 2 years. And today I want to share it with you. So what we found out is that there's still a problem with social acceptance of new technology, especially during the phase where the technology will be tested or developed. So the people and the public are not able to see what is the goal of it and the results. So it was really important to do a lot of public information events and discussions to inform the public in the city of Hamburg and to bring in their ideas as well. Another point was that there is an internal need of ITX expertise. There's such a lot of people coming to the city of Hamburg and want to implementing their innovative solutions. And it's quite difficult for the city of Hamburg to decide if it's good or bad way to do it. So we, as our company and association, we are supporting this process. But we found out that it's very important for the future that they need to recruit experts for the local agencies to ensure that there's a smooth and easy and fast way of decision-making regarding new technologies. The third point is the communication coordination between different stakeholders. So at the beginning, we just involved for sure the specialist agency like the transport agency. But from use case to use case, we found out, okay, we need some more decision makers. Who's responsible for energy? Who's responsible for regulation? And in each use case, we found out a new stakeholder we need to involve. We needed to explain them what we're doing. So my advice is find out early, identify the relevant stakeholders and involve them in an early stage. And my last point is clear and harmonized regulations are still missing. If you want to deploy new solutions in real traffic environments, you will have a lot of problems regarding regulations in Germany as well as in the European Union. So we found out that it's quite important as one city to make workshop and knowledge transfer with other cities as well in Germany and in Europe and other cities in the world, because then you can share your best practice and you can define where is the biggest need for regulation, and you have a better way for communication to decision makers like the federal government or the European Commission, for example. So these points are just a short insight of what we have made in the last years in Hamburg and what we have experienced. So I'm happy to answer your questions, maybe more in detail. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Well, already I'm receiving many questions from the chat, and one of the questions that has received several votes is the one I will ask you straight away, Steve. So IT has been there for almost a decade. Do you believe that our infrastructural developments and above all our standards are going in the right direction to have a fully autonomous future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think so. At the beginning, the process was quite slow, for sure, because there were no experts, there were no manpower to handle all of this. But right now, the city of Hamburg is quite active in standardization groups in Germany as well as in Europe, and they do have a straight plan after 2021 as well. So 37 traffic lights are just the beginning. Currently, there's planned more than 150 traffic lights in the next 3 to 5 years to deploy with this technology and with these services they deploy. It's not just the technologies, there are services behind them as well. So they're on a really good way to do this, and to ensure that it's future driven, it's important to standardize the processes behind the technology, because technology is changing. But the processes for a city and the infrastructure providers need to be fixed. And I think this they have done really good in the past. And so I think there's a good chance for them to bring all of this to real.
Excellent. So basically what you're saying is that you ramped up your manpower and the skills to speed up developments. And secondly, the processes behind the standards are aligned and well understood. So thank you very much for the answer, and also to our audience for these questions. Now let me introduce our second speaker. He's from Silicon Valley. He has both a doctorate in psychology and a master's degree in electrical engineering. He's an entrepreneur, an engineer, an educator, a psychologist, and a writer. And you may even have viewed his TED Talk on organic leadership. Dr. Malek Yamani, and today he will take us through the following points: smart cities, smart transport, and the future of man. He will focus on 4 countries: China, the United Arab Emirates, Rwanda, and the USA. And he will focus on the collaboration between the private sector and governments. Malek, be my guest.
Good evening. Thank you very much all for being with us. I would like also to send a special thank to Vitronic, its teams and its leadership for inviting me to talk about this fascinating topic. My name is Malek Yamani. I am from the US, and I will be sharing with you ideas about 3 topics. So the first one is about smart cities. Second one is about mobility, smart mobility. And finally, the question that comes to mind: what is the future of mankind in all this, in both smart cities and smart roads? Let me start by answering these 2 first very crucial questions. First one is, what is a smart city? And second one, what are the implications of a smart city? If we take the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, for definition, they say that a smart sustainable city is an innovative city that uses information and communication technology and other means to improve, one, quality of life, second, efficiency of urban operations and services, and three, competitiveness, while ensuring that it meets the needs of present and future generations with respect to economic, social, and environmental aspect. There is a lot to say about this definition, but if we were to look into it, we will find that smart city literally is about one, about accelerators. In other words, how to speed up the way how we are doing business, how we are living our lives. And the masterpiece in accelerating everything is technology. The other side of a smart city is control data. In other words, by building a smart city, we are going to enter a world of control of data, anything, control of information, and control of object, as well as control of data, of information. And what is the implication of all this? We find out that one, there is a phenomenon. By engaging in a smart city, we engage literally in a phenomenon we call evolution-revolution cycle. In other words, what is new today will be old tomorrow, and what will be new tomorrow will be old the day after. And therefore, it will be hard to really keep track of what's going on, of the innovation that will be taking place. And what does that mean? It means that we need new operation models. That's for businesses and for government as well. The actual operation models, business operation models, will not work anymore. At the same time, in order for us to run this advanced operation models, we need future expert, future-oriented government and business expert. Why? Because at the end of the day, no matter how smart the city is, no matter how our roads are smart, there will be always a need for human expert to be able to really manage and lead technology. Otherwise, the result will not be that good. And of course, in order for these experts to run their government and their businesses, we need a good operational governance, executive operational governance. I'm not talking here about the board executive governance. I'm talking about the level of below the CEO and below. How we can create a new governance, operational governance that will help achieve the result and make the best out of whatever goal we want to achieve. And finally, we need the strategic visions. We have to move from strategy. Not only we have to build a strategy, because we are going to need to think the future, and therefore we need a strategic vigilance that will allow us to work to bring the future into the present and not the other way around. We cannot work out our way now toward the future. We have to bring the future to the present and then work our way forward. So that's a smart city, and these are the implications from a business perspective. There are two countries that are leading smart cities and smart roads. China, with over 300 smart cities in project. There's a very interesting collaboration between the government and businesses. China is going very fast in this, and the other country is India. India has allocated a lot of money, billions of dollars, to build in the near future more than 100 smart cities. Of course, beside this, we have the Middle East. We have Oman, we have United Arab Emirates, we have KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Literally every single country of the GCC region has has advanced programs and projects to engage in this beautiful phenomena, which we call smart cities and smart roads. Dubai is a fascinating world. Muscat, if you were to go to Muscat, for example, or to Jeddah, then you will be able to see again this amazing improvement that are taking place and how our cities over there, how smarter they are getting. And of course, this is all happening because of the type of leadership and the belief in the future, and the fact that this leadership is willing to take the risk to make the best services and to present the best services for their people and for their visitors. As for leading industries, as you know, smart cities is not one field, it's many fields. There are three main sectors that are the focus of all all businesses and all government. First, road and transport. As we know, transportation is economy, and economy is transportation. A country that does not have the right infrastructure, the right smart roads cannot move forward. The second field is health. The third one is living lifestyle. And what we are seeing is, I believe coronavirus has shown that we are very weak when it comes to healthcare, and there is a need to do something about it. Of course, nothing could have happened without strong connectivity, cloud computing, data analytics, sensors, Internet of Things, and Internet of people, IOP and IoT, and that's at the same time artificial intelligence. For those of you who visit Silicon Valley right now is really its entire focus is on artificial intelligence. Traffic, why it's important? Because one, it will be solving a lot of our problems. Anything that has to do with traffic jams, accidents, and pollution, so on and so forth. Right now, for example, 2019, we had more than 1.5 million people died just because of car accidents. And of course, you can imagine the number of major accidents. Same thing when it comes to mobility. So many stuff have been taking place. From a car perspective, we are seeing the electrical vehicle. We are seeing self-driving autonomous vehicles. Actually, based on the project I have been looking into, by 2022, we will have a fully autonomous vehicle, and that's an indication for a lot of stuff. Flying cars are coming. We have seen a deployment in Dubai, for example, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And then we have advanced driver assistance systems. And without forgetting, for example, that we have the Hyperloop and the under-tunnel road that are taking place mainly right now in the United States. For example, in the near future, the distance to go from Washington to New York, all you would need is 30 minutes, and to go from Los Angeles to San Francisco, for example, all what you would need is 45 minutes. From a road perspective, there are so many things again happening: smart intersections, musical road, V2V communication, and so on and so forth. And the aim of all this, one, is safety of road users. Then renewable energy. The user is the primary target, but at the same time, using energy is very important to all of us. And it's very, instead of waiting 20 minutes or 30 minutes, we are talking about to charge an electric car. In the near future, you don't have to wait. Your car will be charged as you drive. The final aim is 1, 0 fatality. In other words, we don't want to see death anymore on our roads, and hopefully no accident, but that's very far. Efficient logistic. Steve was talking about Hamburg and how active Hamburg is, and I believe self-weighing roads and all these tracks will be able to travel safely, but most importantly, without wasting a lot of time, because there are many ways of weighing them without stopping them. And then finally, zero CO2 emissions. These are very crucial elements. The question is, how did we get here and where are we going? There are literally 4 sectors that have been changing our entire world, and that they are changing enough to actually, they are changing our lifestyle in a very fast pace. The first one is cars. The first steam car was in 1769. The first gasoline car was in 1885. By the way, that's a Mercedes-Benz. And then now 2012, we are talking about Tesla, first Tesla Model S sedan. Transistors, 1947, 1950, we had 1 transistor in a small. And now, notice the jump, 1960, in a TTL load gate, we had 16 transistors. 2010, we have more than 8 billion transistors in one small little chip. The other fascinating word that's going very fast is internet. 1969, the birth of internet, and now we're talking about the social media, booming social media that's taking place over everything. And finally, speed. 1980, we were talking about 1 gigabyte. We were talking about analog voice. And now we are talking about a unified technology using 5G. In 2019, we have witnessed the commercialization of 5G. And now you go to, for example, to Saudi or to Oman or to Dubai or any countries of the GCC, for example, you will find people talking about 5G as if it was a given. Finally, the big question is, now that we have smart cities and we have smart roads, what about our human intelligence? Well, here's what's going on. 2 teams have gone and done a lot of research. One of them is a Norwegian team. It did the research on some young military Norwegians, and the research started from 1970 to 2009. The test included 730,000 people. The result was IQ since 1970 has been declining by 7 points per generation. In other words, every 20 to 30 years, our intelligence goes down by 7 points. At the same time, another British team that did same research all the way from 1945 until now, and they are finding also that our human IQ is falling down by 2.5 to 4.3 points every decade. That's really stunning. The equation comes like this. So we have smart cities. We have smart transport. But at the same time, we are witnessing less smart people and less mobile people. Technology, smart cities will make people move less, travel less. And therefore what will happen is we're going to see all sorts of issues, obesity, less, lack of moving around. But at the same time, technology comes with other impact. Smart cities will come with their own defects, like, for example, unemployment, anxiety, literally. And this is, I'm not happy to underscore this, but with smart cities, one of the issues we're going to be facing is what I call the future psychological bomb. In other words, either we prepare for it right now, or we're going to live that psychological issue that will overwhelm the rest of us, exactly like Corona is doing right now, COVID-19 is doing right now. And this is why the equation, unfortunately, smart cities plus smart transport do not give us, until this moment, do not give us a smart man, or to a smart man. And this is why we need, the only way to solve this big issue is literally by engaging in a collaboration between private and public sectors. I'm talking here about knowledge sharing. I believe present and future planning. Right now, there is a disconnect between the private sector and the public sector, And I believe it's time for these two sectors to come together. A smart city, one of the things that smart city will do, we will not have public sectors. Everything will be private. And therefore, there is a must that private and public sectors people should come together to share knowledge, to prepare for present and future planning, to integrate human being, to write policies, to prepare for future and better risk management. Otherwise, humanity will not be happy with smart cities. So these are the three topics: smart cities, smart roads, unfortunately, do not lead to smart people. The good news is it's not too far. We're not too late. We still can engage and make the best of this intelligence, human intelligence that we have reached in the 21st century, and that we will reach more in the coming years. This is my talk. Thank you very much. If you let me know if you have any questions, please.
Okay, thank you, Malek. I'm very happy that at the end of the talk, you managed to squeeze some good news in there. And there are some pressing issues that you raise on the social front, having people who are raise anxiety, etc., because of this huge amount of digital information that they have to congest. I've also seen some questions on that on the chat. And also you've raised the issue of, the public sector, basically your opinion that the public sector and the private sector are not aligned. So I will use that in the forum later on. I will start with one question to you directly now, Malek, before we move to Jörg from the chat. In countries where the car is the most dominant mode of travel, Malek, how can we overcome this social barrier and promote smart mobility with concepts such as mobility as a service? Malek, do you have a response on that one?
Yes, I believe all leaders, literally with no exceptions, and mainly those, for example, remember, like I said, for China and India, that's a necessity, just because right now 80% of the SMEs are in the countryside. So they had to build this smart road, and they have to really engage in innovative ways to make people communicate and travel faster. But at the same time, in countries, for example, if you were to go, like I said, like if you were to go to Muscat or to Dubai, for instance, or to Jeddah, it's fascinating. The question is, same thing, for example, if you look at Africa, for example, in Lagos, Nigeria, or in Kigali, Rwanda, you will find that leaders are doing all their best to engage, to move people from the old ways of driving and moving around to the new ways. For example, I'm sure you heard about the Hyperloop between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. At the same time, we have seen so many tunnels and so many new roads being built, and all these roads are very smart also. We are seeing a country, for example, like Oman, very eager to make a difference when it comes to transportation and the minimization of accident and so on and so forth. So there is a lot going on. The leadership is aware. The good news is this leadership is very future-oriented, is not afraid of making good, bold decisions. And most importantly, there is a sync between leadership and the people, and that will make their lives, or the life of these countries, easier in the coming future.
Okay, thank you very much, Malek. Now let me introduce our third speaker from Berlin. not only the host city of the 2021 Smart City Vision Conference, but also another smartest city in Germany, the managing director of EMO, the organization that acts as the midwife for businesses with smart city propositions, Mr. Jörg Welke. Today he will explain to us his smart city developments in his city. So Jörg, you have the honor.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me all. First of all, a warm welcome from my side and from my home office, as you can see, in the autumnal Berlin. I'm Jörg Welke, as Kees already mentioned. I'm a project manager at the Berlin Agency for Electromobility, EMO. And what this is, I'd like to explain to you and tell you this. First of all, let me thank you, Vitronic, for giving me the opportunity taking part in this Berlin Vision online talk. And yeah, I tried to get quickly through my speech for having more time for your questions and for the discussion afterwards. This slide seems to be a little bit boring, but it explains a lot what we do here in Berlin. As you can see on the top, we are not part of, or we are not under the aegis of the traffic administration, but on the aegis of on behalf, or we act on behalf of the Senate Department for Economics, Energy, and Public Enterprises. And that's why we are part of Berlin Partner for Business and Technology, which is the business or economical development company here in Berlin. And below you can see what we do. We collect businesses and companies here in Berlin and engage them and empower them to do projects in the field of smart mobility. Just to have a brief look on our partner network, you can see that there are not many car manufacturers, but a very diverse selection of companies here in Berlin. Some bigger ones like Beyond Petroleum from Great Britain, but also grown-ups like Clever Shuttle or EB, which are which were startups here in Berlin and were grown over the years. And then we have the club for young enterprises whom we help to grow and go into the partner network at least. And with all these companies, not only with these, but especially with these companies, we do projects in the field of smart mobility. Our tasks are, as I mentioned, or as Kees already said, we understand ourselves as a midwife for doing projects. So we are really rarely doing projects by ourselves. Sometimes we do, we are sometimes in projects and we have work packages there, but that's really seldom. And once a project starts, we are out again and we fulfilled our task to bring the actors together. As I said, the network, the growing network, and is one task. Guidance, if companies need help, they don't have to be in our network. We help every companies who come to us in terms of smart mobility. And for sure, communication. This is a big part also what we do. We spread the word of the benefits of smart mobility in Berlin. We do that by press releases, newsletters, events, big events, and so on. When we were founded in 1922, we're not that old, 10 years ago, our task was to show the ability of electromobility to fulfill tasks in the daily life for businesses. And that was done in a huge project, the Showcase Electromobility Berlin, the International Showcase Electromobility Berlin. And afterwards, we found that it's not done with exchanging one driving train in the car to the other, from the combustion engine to the electric. But we have to do more and to be sustainable at the end. And you might have seen this before. We covered this a little bit from Daimler, who has a case department. We put the S at the end for sustainable. So our projects focus on these topics: connected traffic, automated traffic, highly automated traffic, shared mobility, and for sure still electric mobility. Here's some numbers for you, letting you know what is going on in Berlin. We have a decent amount of electric cars in Berlin. The share is more or less the same like in Germany overall. We have about 18,000 electric cars. That was from July, this number. I guess it has grown in the last 2-3 months very much. The hidden champions of electric mobility here in Berlin are the two-wheelers, pedelecs, e-bikes, e-scooters. And just to say a word to you, the infrastructure, we have about 1,800 publicly accessible charging stations or charging points here in Berlin, which is the rate that is recommended by the European Union. So we meet these requirements to have one charging point for 10 electric cars in the public space for sure. What we don't count here is the charging infrastructure on private grounds, for example, at retailers or something else. Here you see that we have good dynamic, especially in this year for electric cars, also in Berlin. That might have to do with the very generous fundings from the federal government for electric cars. You get right now, together with the companies, it's an agreement, 9,000 euros for an electric car as a subsidy. So here you have also the development of the charging infrastructure over the last years. And yeah, I guess it's growing fast now, and yeah, it's decent. We call ourselves the sharing capital of Germany here in Berlin. We have all main sharing services: car sharing, also ride sharing, bike sharing, scooter sharing, and kick scooter sharing. The scooter sharing here is meant the mopeds, and we have two companies who provide electric mopeds for sharing here in Berlin. I show you this slide to explain why we think that there is a good landscape for doing smart mobility businesses. We have the lowest car owning rate in Germany. We have 320 cars per 1,000 inhabitants. This is in Germany and in Europe a real low number. So we have a very open atmosphere to new ways of transportation. Here I have brought you some projects where we were partly involved to bring them to daily life. Yelby is a project from the Berlin traffic company, BVG. Here at these stations, you can exchange from one model, mobility model, to another. Let's say you arrive here by train at the station and you want to go the last 2 or 3 miles to your home with either car sharing, scooter sharing, or ride sharing. This is a very nice project for letting people experience multimodality. They give us for 1 month their car keys, and they don't drive their own cars anymore, and use alternative mobility for what we're giving them vouchers, which are worth more than 500 euro each for 1 month, though that's quite a lot. And we already had in the last 3 years a decent number of people who got rid of their private owned car. Here, these are the projects for highly automated driving. We don't say autonomous driving because it's still not level 5. There's a steward on board. And we had until last year the first project in public space, the so-called C-Mile. And this was extended, and we start again this year in December with an extended area and with 3 buses instead of just 1. And what we one important task here is to find out more about the trust and acceptance of autonomous driving in of the public in Berlin. Here we have a logistics project. This is a mobility hub where goods are provided for 5 different mobility partners at one spot. We have the electric fire truck, which went on the street this year. Funny side kick here is that this electric truck in the first phase has to be accompanied by a diesel fire truck in case of emergency that this won't work. So the trust and acceptance in electromobility in terms of big vehicles at the fire department is probably not that high, so we have to persuade them. Here we have a smart infrastructure project. Several companies, 5 companies in Berlin, share their infrastructure with to each other. And this is the first step. And in the second step, they will also share their car fleet and their operations. Yeah, those were the projects. And I was asked to mention some challenges we have. And I guess the challenges we have here are not much different to those all over the world, at least, if not at least in Germany. I guess one problem, for example, for shared mobility is that we still don't have a single sign-on solution for different services. So we have 16 or 17 different sharing services here in Berlin, and you have to go through the registration and payment process every time. So if you're a beginner of using multimodal mobility, you have to do this 16 times or 17 times. This is really annoying. So there we are working on single sign-on solutions for the future. Another problem, for example, is that we don't have free parking for free floating car sharing services. We have that in Hamburg, and it's working quite good, I think, Steve. We don't have that here in Berlin. We wish we had, because it's really a hard business for car sharing services to pay these amounts. In terms of charging infrastructure, we have some problems. For example, if private properties or companies or want to install charging infrastructure at their headquarters, they need to find out who owns the real estate, and that makes it really complicated to at the end to install private infrastructure which might be used publicly. With the growing amount of charging infrastructure in Berlin, we have for sure an increasing pressure on power grids. For example, to let you know this, if the one law says that grid providers are not allowed to invest in grid in future by prognosis. They have to do it on demand. So there's the hen and egg problem sometimes. If, for example, a big company like the BVG that I already mentioned is going to operate electric buses, they need to know and to plan what the grid is capable in the future, but they can't plan properly because the grid operator can only empower the grid in that moment where they need this increasing power. Then we have on the streets, we have an increasing competition for public space. We have a major discussion here in Berlin right now about changing through the Corona crisis, especially who owns the street, who is going, is it only for cars, or should it be also more, should there be more space for pedestrians and bicyclists? Yeah, and in terms of automated vehicles, it's hard to get allowances. That's also long and very affordable process, but it's not only in Berlin for sure, it's in Germany overall. Sometimes we have an antique and obsolete legislation in terms of mobility, which is years and ages and decades old, and we need to renew those. And overall, the biggest challenge, I guess, is to change routines in the in daily life and to change mindsets in the heads of users of mobility. So us at the end and the people. But there's light at the horizon. In Berlin, we have the first mobility law, which rules the basics of mobility in Berlin. It's the first one, and until now the only one in Germany on the state level, and also on the federal level. We have no mobility law like this, and this might help in future to bring innovative projects and smart city projects or smart mobility projects on the street. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm keen to your questions you have.
Well, thank you, Jörg, for all this diversity. And I can imagine if you look at the stakeholders you are dealing with, for instance, on the single sign-on initiative or the charging infrastructure, but any other initiative as well in a city as complex as Berlin, how do you sort of keep the energy going? How do you make sure that emo remains optimistic and positive and forward-looking? And how do you keep yourself and your staff motivated?
Yeah, some weeks ago, a Dutch city planner said in a newspaper in Berlin that no one in Berlin has a vision of the future and the future of mobility. And yeah, I guess he's a little bit right in that terms. But the lack of vision and the problems we have, we compensate probably a little bit from this bottom-up approach we have to support entrepreneurs, innovative companies, people, institutions, research institutions to do small projects everywhere and to ramp up new mobility in that way, so that the demand comes from the bases, from the grassroots, and not the top-down approach that I wish we had also the top-down approach, but probably we have more power from the ground. So yeah, but to work with all these companies, with the entrepreneurs and these innovative people, this is very much fun, and this is where we take our energy from.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Okay. Now, I believe one goal of our session is already met. Thank you all three speakers because you have already inspired us. Now let's see if, like Michael said, we can build some bridges and share some more insights. We have, thank you all for the chat, and thanks Manuel for sort of aligning them for me. And I think it would be good to pick one from the chat that also is linked to one of the talks. It's a question that's Steve. So do you think that overloading humans with more information to be able to make informed choices for smart mobility is a good idea in a world where massive communication is already in place? This was also having heard Malek's view on smarter cities, but less smarter people. So Steve, what is your thought on that?
Yeah, that's for sure a big problem in our current world, that there are so many informations we can able to find, and but I think it's important to communicate the right information at the right time. And if you stop sharing information on things, I think we get a more bigger problems, like, you know, with the topic fake news. There are a lot of examples in the field of mobility services where people think to know what's happening there, but that's not true. A good example for this is, for example, the eCall activities. So the Pan-European eCall, an automatic eCall implemented in your car, who's calling the 112, an emergency service, if you have an accident. All the people thought at the beginning that this system is just there to collect information about them. And in this case, it's really important to share more information regarding the system and the facts behind that. So it's the same if you talk about mobility, new mobility systems in cities. So I think, yes, we need to share more information and to ensure that the people can have all information they need to find out the right decision. So we are not able to ensure that it is the right decision at the end, but we need to share all the information they need for this.
Okay, so you're basically also mentioning that we should understand the background of the technology with the eCall example. Well, thank you, Steve. Maybe Malek, because you introduced the sort of the problem of smarter mobility but less smarter people. How do you see this?
Oh, thank you very much, Michael. Well, first of all, there is right now we have a big change. We are a big move from a village to an application. In other words, the world is not a village anymore. We are, and we will be more and more living in a world of applications. All what you need is an application, and therefore a mouse click. Something very interesting that's happening right now in the world of the internet and connectivity and so on and so forth, and that is what we call a virtual emotional intelligence applied on people. In other words, I give you a lot of information, but at the end, I am the one who is going to make the choice for you. Do you see what I mean? So what's happening? Yes, we are exposed to so much information, but at the same time, there is this engine, this virtual emotional intelligence engine that drive people and force them to make some certain choices. Another thing that I've been seeing is, imagine this, even the human typology has been changing for the last 3 years. In other words, what we used to know about introvert versus extrovert and so on and so forth, that's not the case anymore. You might find an individual very introverted in a place, and then you shift and just 15 minutes distance from where he or she was, and there you will find another, instead of an extrovert, you'll find an introvert person. So there is a lot going on in the human way of thinking and seeing. Another thing that's taken place is the world of internet. Smart cities are moving us from a world of knowledge to a world of information. So instead of having concrete knowledge that you can use, you'll have a bunch of information you may not use, but it's good to know. Another thing is the fact that people are lagging. And when you are lagging, and when you have this distance between the technology that's going so fast and our thinking that's going a little bit slow, and the way of perceiving things that's going a little bit slow, you know, this lagging distance, the difference of distance forces people into basically losing track of what's going on, and therefore they give in to whatever happening around them. So, and this is why I said, I believe that it's time for all entities, private entities and public entities, to come together to make sure that we, the humans, are, at least from a thinking perspective, ahead of the technology and not the other way around. Otherwise, we will suffer, and our generation, the coming generation, will suffer. Just to give you an example, very simple example to you, Michael, and to our audience, I was in the countryside, and I asked a farmer, how do you use WhatsApp? Because I saw them using a lot WhatsApp. So I asked them, you don't know how to read, you don't know how to write. How are you using, what are you using WhatsApp for? And he gave me an example. He said, wait a moment. He took his smartphone, clicked on the voice on WhatsApp, and called his wife. Hello, Fatima, could you please open the gate for the herd? So in other words, technology is transcending even our reading and writing and whatever we use, you know, technology. In smart cities, everything we knew will be transcended by a new concept, a new way of thinking, a new way of doing things. This is why I say, and by the way, this is applied to United States, it applied to China, it applied to Dubai, to Muscat, and to Berlin, and to Paris. I believe it's time that education and public organizations have to come together to go ahead of the advances when it comes to technology and information sharing.
Okay, well, Malek, thank you very much. And for the next question, we are sort of zooming in from the human factor to a very specific mobility aspect. It's a question I can, I think, ask Jörg. The question from the forum is in a smart mobility context, what would be the role of our traffic control centers or enforcement authorities? Do we really need them in a smart future? So Jörg, maybe you can answer that one.
Do we need traffic management at the end, is the question, right?
Or the control centers and the enforcement authorities, to be specific.
Yeah.
Maybe that helps.
Yeah, I wish we wouldn't need them, but I think we will need them. And the question is, will they be able to persuade the people to that it's useful and to that people trust in it and accept it also. I mean, we have some good experiences in this project I mentioned from highly autonomous or highly automated driving in these shuttle buses here in the north of Berlin. People loved it, and the question about data security or even security of the car weren't that much, and they just used it. And I was really surprised that there was such a big acceptance of this new technology. But let me say to the former question also, I think one really big problem is that, or it's not a problem. People have routines, and it's good to have routines because we wouldn't be able to manage our daily lives without routines. But especially in the field of mobility, we have very, very strong routines, and usually we just use one kind of transportation. For example, I'm using the bicycle mostly, and other people use the car. And to change this and to get to come to this openness to experience new mobility and, as Malek said, to use the information that is provided to me is the biggest problem. So we don't have a technology problem. We have a social science not problem, but challenge to go into the public and to tell people why smart mobility is useful. Not only useful, but necessary in the future, for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. I will move on with another question from the chat. I will first ask Malek and maybe then Youssef, also from your experience in the Middle East. The question is, Malek, in what manner the experience from traffic safety projects in the UAE or Saudi Arabia are transferable to Europe, particularly to Eastern Europe, member states of the European Union? So can the Eastern European countries, what can they learn from the lessons learned from the UAE and Saudi Arabia? Malek.
Thank you very much, Michael. This is also a very, very interesting question. It's interesting. Technology is being invented in West, and it's being implemented more. So invention in the West, implementation in the East. That's a good way of connecting between the East and the West. So technology will be able to do what politics will not be able to do. There are a lot of things to learn from the Middle East. One is literally a system of governance that will allow leaders to make bold decisions, strong decisions, decisive decisions, like, for example, turning cities or road into smart cities or smart roads. A good interconnection between leadership and people. This is what makes really making the decision for a leader easier. Third, building just this concept. You look at any country of the GCC, and mainly in Dubai, you'll find something very interesting. The concept that says, or this slogan that says, build it and they will come and get it or buy it or live in it, it works. And I believe it's good to engage into future positive thinking and allow people to make choices. And this is what the Middle East is doing. This is what Dubai is doing. This is what Oman are doing. This is what the Saudi Arabia and the Qatari people are doing, and same thing with Kuwaiti and Bahrain. This is what they are doing. This is what also is being done in Kigali. And the difference also between these countries and and Europe, for example, or Eastern Europe, is the fact that when you go, for example, to Muscat or to Jeddah or to Kuwait City or to Dubai or Abu Dhabi, if you were to be absent for, let's say, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you come back and here you are in front of a completely different city, new roads, new street lights, and so many other stuff new. In other words, it's very easy to see the changes versus Eastern countries and Europe, for example. If you were to take Prague, for instance, or to take, for example, something like Paris, these are two old cities, two historical cities. There's nothing to do about the infrastructure. It's there. So all what you have to work on is how to make them smarter when it comes to light, signs, roads, connectivity, and so on and so forth. So in general, I believe leadership, bold decisions, risk taking, and most importantly, trusting the future, because the future will not fail you. And that's what I think, Mike.
Okay, well, Malek, thank you very much for these clear statements. Maybe as a director in the Middle East for Vytronic, Youssef, do you have any particular specific projects that or lessons learned from traffic security safety projects that the Eastern Europe and European countries can learn from?
Oh yes, of course. What I want to say, the traffic safety in the Middle East, it's at the top of the agenda of the leadership here. So it was really proven in the last 10 years that for example, UAE or Oman, for example, we reduced the fatalities by almost 80%, which is phenomenal. So, and the government are investing in noise technology. So we have some examples of special projects like in Abu Dhabi, for example. It's completely a smart project where they have different kind of ITS systems and enforcement of many features like mobile usage or seatbelt enforcement, tailgating. So, and we saw the results days after implementing such kind of technology. So I think this is the experience what we can really bring into Europe. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Moving on to the next question. We have many, so let's move on to the next one. Steve, a question for you. When we speak about ITS goals, can we project it into economic figures? So what is the economic impact of the fatalities reduction, the efficient logistics, reduced carbon footprint for instance, a city of 1 million people? So maybe Steve, do you have any view on that?
Unfortunately, I do not have any numbers with me, but for sure, this is also part of such an ITS strategy to making cost-benefit analysis, and we are using some researchers in the background who are doing this based on the single activities which are planned to do. So beginning from intelligent infrastructure to specific safety solutions. For example, the vulnerable road user part. The city of Hamburg decided to invest in all of the public trucks in the town to install a retrofit solution for detecting bicyclists and detecting vulnerable road users at crossings. And I think the investment was around about 3,000 euros per vehicle. And we talk about, I think, maybe last year, 5 deaths in town based on this scenario, especially this scenario. So for me personally, it's quite difficult to make an economic analysis about safety relevant solutions. But this is an example where the city really fast decided to do the investment to ensure or to maybe achieve just a little increase of safety. So sorry that I do not have any numbers for you. Maybe I can collect it afterwards, but I think it's important to do the economic analysis, but in the field of safety, I think it's not that relevant.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this. And indeed, public safety seems to be a recurring topic where all interests are aligned. So thanks again. I understand, Jörg, you wanted to respond as well.
Well, there are some low-tech solutions for traffic safety. For instance, we have by the way, we have a Vision Zero in Berlin as well, to have no death on the streets. Unfortunately, we have more than 10 already this year. It's increasing, not decreasing. But there is another city in Europe where very low-tech solution leaded to already to the Vision Zero, which is Helsinki in Finland. And the solution was to have tempo 30 all over the street, all over the city. So tempo limit to 30 kilometers an hour. And yes, people here in Berlin, also the administration, are thinking about also having this in Berlin. and to slow the traffic down. And for that you don't need that much technology for sure. But yeah, this one low-tech solution maybe. Sometimes it's easier.
Thank you, Jörg.
I think.
So adding indeed the low-tech solutions to the mix is a trend. We also see in Western Europe, like cities like Brussels, Amsterdam, etc. Moving on to the next question. Let me ask Steve, the recent change in Hamburg, does it have any influence on the smart city strategy? The government change in Hamburg.
That you mean. Yeah, for sure. Especially in the field of the ITS strategy. So the strategy as itself is fixed, but and change in government, especially now in Hamburg, where the Green Party gets a high vote, has a direct influence in the activities. So there's currently more specified and focused on the vulnerable road user part, and less on the automotive part. So this is a direct influence on it. So, or another example, the pop-up lanes for bicyclists. It's really good example for our activities on the test track. So you need to digitalize the whole track for the automotive industry, for other users there. And now, from 1 month to another, you need to include pop-up bike lanes. So it's completely new to all the standards who are existing and all the processes who are there. And so there is a change for sure, but and that I need to underline, there's no change on the overall strategy to handle the challenges with intelligent mobility solutions. So this is still the same vision, and I think it's important to do so, because it doesn't help if you start such a strategy and do it just for 4 years. You will need more than 10 years for such a big town, such a big city like Hamburg, to get results, to get positive results based on that.
Excellent. Well, then maybe already the last question. Well, I will start with Jörg, and maybe we can also squeeze in Malek on the same question. So starting with you, Jörg, first. Looking back since the beginning of COVID-19, the demand for mobility isn't the same. So do you think that after this crisis, the concept of mobility will become what it was, or will it change structurally? So Jörg, could you give a quick view on that one, and then we will move to Malek.
Well, I just can tell from the experience we have here in Berlin, we have a strong increase of bicycling. We have a slight increase of private car usage. We have, after really a crisis in the sharing services, we have an absolute exponential growth in sharing usages. I spoke yesterday to one of the project managers at one of the main sharing services, and he said they had recently one of the best days in businesses ever. We have the pop-up lanes also, the bicycle pop-up lanes here in Berlin, and there's a discussion about it. And yeah, I would hope that there is a change, and I'm also optimistic that there will a structural change through COVID-19. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Jörg. So basically, you're saying that that the cycling, but also the sharing services went up, and also initiatives like the pop-up lanes are moving on, and You are hoping it
Yeah.
will stay the same, but you're never sure. Malek, maybe what do you have to add to this sort of view into the future?
Michael, there are two aspects of this, two answers to this question. The first one in regard to mobility, to transport or mobility. We will require more mobility, and the demand for it will keep increasing, at least for the next 5 to 7 years. Why I'm saying this? Because people are still relying on cars, on tracks and so on, track to transport their goods, and car to move around, and buses and so on and so forth. The other aspect of mobility is the virtual mobility, and this will increase faster than we have thought before. Actually, COVID has made it even faster, and the demand for more speed is now getting a fair share throughout the world, whether we're talking about Africa, Latin America, Europe, or United States, everybody, or Australia and New Zealand, everybody is asking for more speed. And actually, one of the biggest characteristics of the 21st human being is speed. We want things to be done yesterday. And this aspect, this speed aspect, will continue with us, will grow with us in the coming near and at the same time in the long-term future. So there will be always a demand for speed, and I believe technology is ready to answer this question.
Thank you, Dr. Yamani. And thank you all. I believe we have really reached our goal, and I would like to quickly jump to Michael for his final closing words. Michael.
Yes, thank you, Kees. I think it was a very wonderful discussion. Thank you to all of you, to our speakers, and to you, Kees. Let me try for the last minutes to make a little wrap up, or let's say the key takeaways which I have noted today. Steve, I think you told us an impressive story about Hamburg. I think this is a wonderful experience, how a good ITS strategy can be implemented by the public sector. So very, very impressive. I think the 9-kilometer test track for automated driving in a city, which is the longest test track in the world, which I learned now, is a clear success story which is coming out of this ITS strategy. Dr. Malek, very inspiring. Thank you very much for your ideas. I think what you did was broaden our scope, broaden our horizon. I mean, it's not just the Arab world and the European world. I mean, you mentioned the 400 smart cities, 300 in China, 100 in India, only in these two major global, say, big countries, which we have to have on our agenda. And then what I found very interesting, maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think you are right. You try to converge these smart city activities, what you mentioned, to one key target, which is safety of road users. And after all, it's about efficiency, it's about transportation, it's about environmental. But in case people are hurt and people are killed, fatal accidents in traffic. So everything is as well, or the bottom line is about this target of road safety and road security. Jörg, thank you for your view on Berlin. Myself, I live in Berlin, and I learned quite a few interesting viewpoints about the city I'm living in. What I didn't know is Berlin. I know Berlin as the capital city of Germany, but I didn't know that Berlin is the capital of shared mobility, at least in Germany. And I think there's a very, very good example of this, what you described as a kind of bottom-up approach and almost a grassroots approach, what Berlin did. And I think, frankly, this is a bit opposite to what Hamburg did. And I think Berlin shows that this approach is working as well. So it's a different approach, but it's maybe more appropriate to the city we are living in. So thank you, Jörg, for this contribution. And regarding the Arab city, I used to work a couple of years in the Middle East, and giving the distance between the geographical distance between Berlin and Hamburg, two very different cities and two very different approaches. I think if you view the UAE, if you see Dubai and Abu Dhabi, it's almost the same geographical distance. Or if you take Muscat, distance from Dubai, it's not so different as a distance from Berlin and from Hamburg. And again, in the GCC and in these three major cities, we have a similar type of, let's say, creative competition for good and new solutions. So I think, let's see it as a kind of city laboratories can be very different, and there are different roads to success. This is at least one of the takeaways I will take away today. Let me thank you again to all of you in the audience, which you couldn't see, but thank you for being with us today. And we will continue. We will have another event, and this will take place in March next year. And this will be focused on the major projects in Abu Dhabi, in Riyadh, in Muscat, and Dubai. I'm looking forward to welcome you all again, and I wish you a nice rest of the week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when